up contextual analysis or wherever we're at. Right.
Good. I wanted to show you that I had a problem here. I had a diagram problem here, and I'm going to show you the diagram and illustrate the stupid mistake I made. I think it is. Well, I was going to say how I got off track to begin with. Here's the problem right down here. It's this phrase, which really translates as kind of a therefore, as if it was a prepositional phrase modifying this idea of verse and forth like this or something to that effect. But in the text, you notice the text and these little notation issues, under the word mayim, that is the word water, is an ethnic, which is the major break. Okay? It's a major break in the sentence. And then comes the conjunctive, therefore they call the name of that place. You see what I'm saying there? An ethnic little carrot.
Yeah.
Yeah, see it? I didn't reflect properly. Now what I have to do is I got to take this off, okay, and I got to put it over here to introduce this clause here to call the name of that place, okay? Now I have to do that by going, I'm not going to do it right now, but I have to go into my libronics to do that, okay? To fix it and then delete this and then put it back in. We did that, I think, once last time, just to show you how the process works. I had another mistake I made too. I'm not going to fix that tonight. So, and here's the next part of the diagram. Okay, now we've got this. The verb used in coordination with the following verb, that is this. And this is my other mistake. This verb and this verb are working together. And here's the Cali's statement of that idea, which I knew. I don't know why I didn't get it in my diagram right. Instead of subordination, the coordination of a complementary verbal idea in the finite verb frequently occurs. The second verb coordinated and form exactly corresponding to the verb by means of conjunction. And it's this one and this one. And what I did is I put it up here and add one clause, and this one is the second clause, and in fact this verb and these are working together for one basic clause. Okay. So I got to go back and fix that. Okay. So I'll show you that sometimes the two processes, the diagram and term analysis, coordinate, work together on a cross like this. Okay, so we got rated. Now notice this, as the second problem that occurred, textual problem in this verse here, with the same issue. Okay, and that frequently happens, so really the same conclusion to the same problem. And they adjusted the text to agree with, some manuscripts, to agree with Samuel. Right? I already did that more than once, the same idea. And so that's that. And here is interesting variation as well. Here we simply have in the valley. And then before, in Samuel, it says in the valley of Wretlind. Well, previously we have in the valley of Wretlind, and in this passage we don't. We just have in the valley, but we have an article with it, okay, which then ties its previous reference to the previous one, so there's no problem. The inclusion of it in one manuscript, Hebrew manuscript, and a few versions, just kind of coordinating with the first time, Wretlind in there. Of course, the reading makes good sense as it stands. It's the hardest reading in one sense. It's the one that would be adjusted, not the other way around. So we keep the text as it stands. No problem there, okay? Okay, let's see anything else I need to talk before we kind of move in this section of conclusion. Okay, that's it. Developing the historical aspects of this. And if I don't do it tonight, we can do it tomorrow. But What would be some of the, you know the story now, I mean, you read it twice, two texts, so can you see what some of the historical aspects of this might be? This just takes us back to our, let's look at some of these in this history. Is there any ethnological issues involved there? Identifications of people? Well, there's ethnic group there that's mentioned, but it doesn't really describe them in any way that would give us any identification other than the previous context of the book relying on that. Yeah. Is there any etymological things here? Well, yeah. Right. The place. Is there any cultic originations or of institutions or ideas, any cultic things involved?
Not as far as worship goes, but as far as gathering the idols up and burning them.
The idols and the gods, and the combination between the ideas, even, perhaps, would be something that could be noted there. And that would be in combination of the two different ways in which the story was read by Samuel and the Chronicles. Any geological issues? In the Samuel passage, I think they're one in the sense that he went out to meet the Philistines. Well, he went out to the stronghold, if you will, right? To a well-defendable spot or a place. So it's in Samuel more than here. Theological, in other words, what's the point of this? Is there any theological issue? Sure. What would be the theological issue? The primary thing when we come to the end of this. We get to the end of it. You remember? And the name of our David, the reputation went out into all the lands, right? And Yahweh put His dread, the dread of Him, the objective identity there, upon all the nations. It established something rather significant in the rise to power on a geopolitical level. So there's a theological purpose to be sure. How about any more moral purpose or involvement in issues involved here? Maybe not anything real tight at that point, right? Well, I better get a full swing. I'll never get my thing back.
Could we be David's obedience?
What?
The moral issue?
Yeah.
Obedience to
that might come out maybe when we deal with the story aspects of it. Okay. So I can get to that aspect. In other words, can we do anything about this? I mean, is this even a player in our event here? Well, there's a setting for this, and that's the political setting is David's, what should we say, anointing as king over all Israel. And so what is the preliminary instance or the conflict? Well, it's that the Philistines didn't like that idea, apparently, right? And they wanted to kind of take over, and so there was a rise to conflict, a battle, which is just simply said, they got smoted, okay? And then unraveled in one sense, and the action concludes at the end, everybody got afraid of David, right? But that happened twice, so this thing carries through 2 times, okay? Right?
Or kind of even more of a, because it seems like the ultimate goal is the dread of the Lord and the reputation of David, and they both came for that purpose.
They both contributed.
So ultimately, the real climax, I guess, would be the second time would be the one.
Well, they would, because why? Well, the first time they had a battle, apparently, and they lost, the Philistines lost. The second time, they not only lost the battle, initial battle, they were chased all the way around to the northern and western territories, right? Yeah, so that's true. Right? So there's more extensive battle that went on at that point, right? So yeah, this structure does have a place, a part to play in the overall. Okay. Other story aspects.
I'm not sure what you're looking for here.
Well, let's think in terms of the story part of it now, where the dialogue is at.
Okay.
So there's something there, right? Some aspect there, because the pacing had changed, obviously, from they smote it and now they talked, right? And rather extensively at one point. So there's that aspect of dialogue, where David and God were on the same wavelength, at least, right? And then the other part of it was David, we don't know what he said or even what he was thinking at that point, but we know that God had a plan probably different than what might have been in David's mind, right? A little more detail, as a matter of fact. And the statement there was to say, God is the one who's going out before you in this battle.
It sounds like their wavelength may have been the same in the fact that their ultimate goal would have been to get rid of the Philistines.
Yeah, okay.
But God's plan was not David's plan.
Okay, well, in other words, it could be that, in fact, part of the difference in the two dialogue aspects might be, that David's plan and God's plan were the same, but now in the second part, God had a different plan than David had.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It sounded like the goal was the same, but how to accomplish it.
Right. And so perhaps the natural tendency for David would have been to follow, victory, the first form of victory, let's follow it up again, probably. But there was a different issue that came about, or a different way God wanted to do it, and probably related to the imagery that we had there. That's part of the story, right? The imagery of the marching, military terminology on the top of the trees, right? I mean, some would just say when you hear the wind blowing on the top of the trees or something, but the imagery is really much more significant than that, isn't it? I mean, it implies God coming down, if you will, and going out before you into the battle, right? And so I think there's something of that aspect of the story that's being communicated through the imagery, right? And also, at the very end, when God that God has come down to smite the camp, and then in the narrated portion of that, David went out and smote the camp, right? David and his people. So there's this coordination, if you will, between God's doing it, but He's doing it through His people, right? And that aspect of the story become very much in one of His applicational developments. And probably, in fact, the story aspects have much more applicational possibilities than the historical one in and of itself. Right? And that's where we probably want to develop that. Make sure we develop that aspect of it in the population of it. Right? And teaching of it. Yeah. You want to say something?
Not that.
Well, let's see. What do I have here? Now we are down to the bottom of this. Now, this has been basically kind of in the category of our codes book category of history. Okay. Now I've got an illustration we're going to do in exercise in 2 Kings. I'm not going to go through all the term analysis and then diagram and all of that. I want to look at that more with a focus upon the story aspects. It is a story here. It's Elijah's transformation here. His trip to heaven here, and Elisha taking over, so to speak. So we want to look at that, focus our attention on those kind of things as part of the story, and I'll see if we'll see some rather significant story dimensions in there. Okay? And we won't do that tonight. We'll do that tomorrow. Okay, we haven't finished narrative literature yet. We're going to do another exercise as we said yesterday. Yesterday the exercise was on typically according to our textbook, an historical event. But today we're going to do a little exercise on what is classified in our textbook here as a narrative event. But I'm not going to do the same procedure in the sense of giving all the background of the book. I'm not going to give the background of the book. I'm not going to give the historical, higher critical information. I'm not going to do the textual criticism and the diagram. By the way, I did fix my diagram last day this morning. And what we are going to focus in on are those peculiar aspects of narrative, and what we want to do is after I put the text up and we read the text, then we want to look at it from the standpoint of the particular features that are involved in the narrative as we see listed here. Some historical purposes, but also these this exegetical perspectives stuff here. We want to look at that and see if we can analyze narrative from this perspective. Okay? And it will also give you some indicator, perhaps, hopefully, of when you work on your own passage, how to interact with these issues in your passage. Okay? And hopefully by the time we're done with this part, narrative literature, then that you'll be comfortable somewhat with your passage. So, the passage that I have for us to work on is 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 to 22. Okay, I'll put the text up here. Okay, and I'm going to also open my Bible here so we can read it, and then after we read it, then we will look at it given those issues that I mentioned. Let's see, verse 2 chapter 2 here. Okay. So, let me chapter 3, it didn't sound right then. Okay, so in 2 Kings chapter 2. Now I can read it from the board so we can follow along. I can make some general comments as we go along. Okay. Chapter 2. Now this is a familiar story to you. Hopefully one that's also generates some interest. It's narrative features. Okay? Now here's how it goes. And it happened when Yahweh was going to take up Elijah in a whirlwind of heaven. So that's getting a setting for this, isn't it? The event. Then Elijah went and Elisha from Gilgal. It's kind of interesting now. I saw some of the translations on that. It said, and Elijah went with Elisha, as if Elisha was kind of the leader of that. And that really isn't the case. Elijah is a leader of that setting. This just simply says, and Elijah went, and Elijah and Elisha went from Gilgal. Okay? And Elijah said to Elisha, stay here, okay? Because Yahweh has sent me to Bethel. Okay? And Elisha said, well, as Yahweh lives and as your life lives as you live, if, I will forsake you or leave you. Now, that phrase, if you recall from your syntax study, this is a way of having a negative concept, all right, a strong negative. So we would then translate it kind of like, I will not leave you, and they went down to that. Okay? And the sons of the prophets, Cyrus is not here, but the sons of the prophets, well, he's in his passage, that's why I mentioned that. And the sons of the prophets keep cropping up throughout this whole thing. And the sons of the prophets came forth, who were at Bethel, to Elisha and not Elijah, recall. And they said to him, do you know that today Yahweh is going to take up your master from your head or from over you as a leader, if